Good afternoon, San Bernardino. Thank you guys for joining me today. We're going to do an update from last night and talk about everything that's happened. So let's make sure that we are live and ready to go. Perfect. Okay. So last night was the special meeting called to discuss the employment of our now previous city manager, Charles Montoya. And so for those of you that watched, it was, uh, quick as the return, but we had I think, a great turnout from the community, those who have been a part of the conversation, those who have been speaking out, and every speaker in the community that showed up was in support of firing Charles Montoya. And they gave, I think, extremely valid reasons, from what he did to Barbara Whitehorn, to what was issued in the press release, to his lying about the letter of intent, and all of these different elements that were leading up to this moment. And what I say and truly believe is that what happened with Barbara Whitehorn and her being terminated by him was really the straw that broke the camel's back in everything that was happening at the same time since his employment began November 1st of 2023. And so I want to go over that because now what is the question, right? Now what are we doing? And now what happens? And what does it mean that he was fired without cause? So let's take a minute and let's look into it. Hi, Mike. Hi, Paula. Hi, Sarah. Thank you guys for joining. So when Charles Montoya was brought to the city, he signed an agreement, an employment agreement, which is public record. It was approved in open session on October 13th of 2023. And it was a very contentious night. It was people standing up and saying, we don't want him, that we are looking in a different direction of, like, let's not hire someone that's been fired 4 times. Everybody ignored that. So he got to sign this contract, and there are a couple clauses in section 11.1 that says he's an at-will employee, that the city manager shall serve at the will and pleasure of the mayor and council. Nothing in this agreement shall prevent, limit, or otherwise interfere with the right of the mayor and council to suspend from duty, remove from office, or otherwise terminate the services of the city manager at any time at the sole discretion of the mayor and council. This agreement may be terminated as follows. And there's 2 ways to fire him. Termination of the mayor and council vote. So section 11.2 says that the mayor and council may vote as a majority of 5 votes to remove him for any reason, without cause. So they could say, we're done. We don't blame you. We just don't want to be with you. And then there's a section that has 11.6 termination for cause. And that says the city council may remove the city manager for cause at any time without prior notice by motion adopted by the affirmative votes of a majority of the city council. For cause for the purpose of this agreement shall mean for any of the following reasons. So if the city manager were to be convicted of or plead guilty or no contest to any crime or offense other than a minor traffic violation that which is likely to have a material adverse impact, they could be fired. Gross misconduct, which is likely to have material adverse impact on the city and or city manager's reputation. That's a big one. That there would be proven failure of the manager to observe or perform any of his duties and obligations if that failure continues for a period of 30 days from the date of his receipt of notice of the council, specifically or specifying the acts or omissions deemed to amount to that failure, or any actions or inactions by the city manager that materially and substantially impedes or disrupts the performance of the city and its organizational component units. It is detrimental to employee or public safety, violates properly established rules or procedures, or adversely affects the reputation of the city, its officers, and its employees. So that's all the reasons he could have been fired for cause. If he were to have been fired for cause, he would not be entitled to any type of severance, any type of payout. So they didn't go for that. They went that he was without fault. And so that means he's entitled to 11.7 severance pay. In the event this agreement is terminated pursuant to 11.2, just a general count of this agreement, the city manager shall receive a severance payment in a lump sum equal to 12 months of the city manager's then monthly base salary, or if lesser, an amount equal to an annual base salary remaining on an unexpired term of the contract. Such severance payment shall be city manager's sole remedy for termination under 11.2 of this contract. The severance pay shall only be paid after the city manager executes a waiver and releases agreement prepared by the city attorney in a form substantially similar to the one set forth in Exhibit A. City manager shall not be eligible for severance pay if this agreement is terminated for any other reason than 11.2. So what this is saying is that because they did not terminate him for any of the above reasons in 11.6, Charles Montoya will walk away from this city with $325,000. In addition, remember, he's been working here for 7 months for what, 250,000. So he's going to walk away with about $500,000 for 7 months worth of work in the city of San Bernardino. That wasn't discussed last night, right? There was not. Let me look at the comments. Can they change their vote if they decide they want to pursue for cause? No. The council cannot go back. They've terminated his contract. They said there was no fault, no cause, and so they cannot now go back and change that. So we are on the hook for this. And we'd have to ask the city attorney that the city doesn't have correct, right? Our city attorney doesn't work for us. I don't know what the city attorney does. So, because we're going to look at this, right? We're going to say, I don't understand how, and this was a conversation in the chambers last night while we were waiting, is, all of these things that have happened to the community and to the council, that we were so sure that the council had a great argument to fire this man and not give him taxpayer money to go away. And so let's look at just a handful of things that were brought up last night. So the finance director comes forward last Wednesday, May 15th, and says that she brought it to the attention of Lynn Merrill, the director of public works, that this bond issue that they were working on, that he was working on with the city manager, to what we were being told was between a $60 and $80 million pool, was actually equivalent to $120 million. And that in the time frame that Charles Montoya was trying to execute this, which he actually validates in an article with the Sun, that he was looking at going into a 2-year accelerated process instead of an overlay of 6 years, which was creating a 30-year, $300 million debt for City Hall. She tells this to Lynn Merrill. Lynn Merrill tells Charles Montoya. And when Barbara Whitehorn gets back to City Hall on after her vacation on May 15th, he and Susie Soren walk into her office, threaten her. Charles threatens her as she accounts that if she does not immediately resign from her position, that he will put out whatever it takes to destroy her public reputation. She says, no, I'm not going to do that. So then he fires her without cause. right? There was no cause. And this is going to be interesting to your question, Sarah. So she's fired without cause. 2 days later, as you guys can see that press release, 2 days later, this crazy press release comes out, and now he's claiming that she was fired for cause, which alone is an HR violation, by the way. So you can't talk about an employee's cause or no cause. You can't make that public. So I don't know what they were doing there, but we'll discuss that. And then that same evening where this director has come and given her testimony of what's happened, has said you can't afford what's going to be, if you approve this moving into tonight, they're asking for $12 million from us within the first 12 months of this. We can't afford that. We don't have the money. The city attorney, Sonia Carvalho, tells the council, well, hey, why don't you ask Charles Montoya all the questions you need to get your clarification, because there's nowhere in any of the backup material that stipulates what Barbara Whitehorn is saying. There's no numbers. Well, when they get to those items, Charles Montoya doesn't answer any questions. He pulls the items stating that he has to go talk to the vendors. I'm going to need to talk to the vendors. We're going to pull these items. I got questions. We'll see. I don't know if we'll bring this back or when I'll bring this back. That's what he says. And then 2 days later, we get this crazy press release that says that the remodeling of City Hall is complicated and with complicated financing and many details, and the meeting needed to adjourn by 10 o'clock. Well, it was only 9 o'clock when the items came up. And then later, in like 2 paragraphs later in the press release, it literally says there were no funding or financial decisions being proposed by the staff. So this whole thing was a crazy orchestrated lie. And that alone right there was a great reason for cause. If you go back to January 31st, where this all kicks off, you had Charles Montoya tell the council that he would entered into a letter of intent with Stifel Bonding for the bonding of City Hall, that they were working, they provided a presentation, and the same people that presented were the same people on his calendar and that he had initially contacted November 3rd, 3 days after starting with our city. He told the council and Councilwoman Calvin, when she would ask, how are you doing all of this without council direction? And he said, I don't need you to do this. I can do this without you. The agendas have consistently lacked the proper backup material. If you've watched Theodore Sanchez continually question, like, where's this information and why doesn't it say that? They've been changing. Check out, this is one of the biggest factors they should have fired for cause. Do you remember, I think it's been 3 if not 2 times now that council direction has been completely disregarded. They've created items within the consent calendar, which are like, just move on, no discussion. We're just going to approve and move on, that have completely changed the city council's direction with no discussion. And when it's been caught, as Damon Alexander caught with Eddie on her last night here's, this wasn't our direction. We didn't ask you to go do these things. Oh, well, it was staff. Staff made the recommendation and we shifted it. That's illegal. That is a violation of the charter. The city council is the legislative body. They set the policies. They create the contracts and agreements, not the city manager and staff. So for all of this, it is very hard for me to understand, and those in the chambers after the fact, to understand why they did not fire this man for cause, because there was tons and tons of cause. So let me see your questions. Is Whitehorn going to be reinstated? So that is not within the power of the city council. What my hope would be, because of all of this, is that they've just put in the interim city manager, Rochelle Clayton, who was the new deputy city manager. Because of everything that's gone on, my recommendation would be look into right? We want to make sure everything's solid. We heard what Director Whitehorn said. Make sure that everything she said adds up, which really Montoya has literally laid the foundation showing that what she was saying is actually accurate. And then once everything is clear, reinstate her for, bring her back because she was wrongfully terminated for whistleblowing. And that has been my discussion, asking the city, council and people to like, hey, look, this isn't fair. There's like, this lady shouldn't just be hung out over here waiting. And how about we not take a lawsuit on that we know we're going to lose? Not that she doesn't have the right to sue, but should she have to, right? Should she even have to go through this process of defending her reputation when we could easily rectify this with a simple, like, we looked into what is Montoya claiming that he fired her for cause? If you can't show that there is any proof to that, give that woman her job back. So that's where I hope this will be. So let's see. Any other questions? If she doesn't get reinstated, I absolutely believe she would sue, and I absolutely agree that she should. Like, you don't get to just hurt people. This city does two things. They cause their own lawsuits out of complete negligence, or they intentionally inflict harm on people and then want to act like the victims when these people come back. You're like, no, you're not going to sexually harass me. No, you're not going to mess with my employment contract. No, you're not going to fire me for no reason. And then they're like, what, why are all these things happening? So there's a lot of different stuff going on. And so we'll talk about, so now that this has happened, where do we go? Well, we're going to talk about the council, because right now Charles Montoya is gone. And Rochelle Clayton is our new interim city manager. And I want to talk about Rochelle real quick because I have come to the council with my concerns. We had talked about this. So Rochelle Clayton was the former city manager of Banning. So she has been a city manager before. She was the interim city manager of Menifee when she came here. And when she was in transition of coming here, she was on administrative leave for an investigation going on in Menifee, which I called out. And so going through, especially, right, we've just gone through this mess in reaching out to Menifee and different sources out there. What is being put out now is that has all been cleared. There was no wrongdoing. The city manager was brought back. They were going to bring her back as well, but she took another position. So that's where that stands with where her investigation ended. It was unfounded. And so I feel today, as only an interim, by the way, only as an interim placeholder, especially when it was between her and Susie Soren, that we are okay with Rochelle Clayton in place as interim city manager. And so that I want you guys to know that's my position on it. I absolutely believe we need to go out for recruitment at some point, but we're going to talk about that too. So that's where Rochelle comes into play. So, but we're here in this moment where these 5 people, Mayor Tran, Theodore Sanchez, Fred Charette, Sandra Barra, and Juan Figueroa, brought Charles Montoya here and disregarded, ignored, defended, dismissed his entire professional record to bring him to the city of San Bernardino after Steve Kerrigan withdrew himself from our recruitment. They rushed. They did not care. The entire community stood in front of them and said there is nothing redeeming about this guy. They put out Charles Montoya's name on October 11th or October 11th, October 13th, whatever day they put out their press release, and they stood by him. regardless of everything that the city said. And 7 months later, $250,000 moving up to $500,000 later, here we are. And yes, the people in the audience cheered the firing of Charles Montoya last night. We absolutely did. One, out of thank goodness this guy is going to be gone, and two, out of relief that we actually had a council do something right. Do like truly do the right thing. But it's time for accountability now. It is time for the city of San Bernardino to hold our elected officials accountable for what they are doing. Because this was their decision. This wasn't an unknown, as you guys have seen the videos today of what Sandra said, compared the city went, because remember, the same night that Charles Montoya was hired was the same night that they had the crime-free housing, and said how hypocritical the community was to be fighting for housing for people with criminal records, but not wanting to give Charles Montoya a chance as city manager. That comparison, crazy, right? Knew of his background, defended his background, said, yeah, well, he was breaking the law, but it really, they even give him a chance to fix it? Mayor Tran said that this is the wholeheartedly best guy for the job, and welcomed him with open arms, and said Charles Montoya will do what's in his best interest and the best interest of the community. Theodore Sanchez overrode Kim Calvin's motion that was seconded by Ben to go back out to hold on to Charles McNeely for 3 more months and keep looking for a city manager. And Fred and Ted and Juan and Sandra and Mayor Tran, they voted for him. This was purposeful. This was their intention the whole time. And now we're on the hook, right? So I think they should have to pay. Our tax dollars fund their salaries every month. The same money that we are now going to owe Charles Montoya. So why should the residents of San Bernardino have to give up paving a street, fixing stop signs and stoplights and park renovations and code enforcement upgrades and beautification projects and anything in our community? Why should we have to deter a single thing in our community so that they can pay this man money that he is not going to work for and earn? Because the argument is, well, this was going to be his salary anyway. This was only going to be his salary should he work, but he's not working. You guys let him go. You did not do anything to hold him accountable for what he was doing in our city. So now it's time for you guys to be held accountable. The mayor and the 4 city council members who voted to bring this now 5-time fired, under investigation by the Attorney General of Arizona, couldn't get a job for a year and a half city manager, they should have to forfeit their salaries to pay his severance. That's what I fully believe. Other than that, what else is there? Because all too often we hear, okay, it's time to move on. It's time to move on from here. We did what we did, now let's move on. No. This was deliberate. The actions were absolutely deliberate. Because they didn't have to do this to us. And so why should they get to move on and get their stipend? And they should have to apologize. They should have to stand in front of our community and apologize for what they have done purposely. Brought this man here, regardless of what the community said. That there weren't enough voices and who cares? As Sandra Ibarra told Charles Montoya, you have big shoes to fill and I'm gonna be watching you. Yeah, great job. Where exactly were you watching him from? Because it wasn't at City Hall, and it wasn't in finance, and it wasn't at the city council meetings because you kept your mouth shut the whole time. And where was Helen Tran? Because there's no accountability here. She was trying to shut down the speakers last night. We cannot trust that our council will do what is right for us. So San Bernardino, you must take action. You have to take your place in this community because we have 3 years left with these 5 people who deliberately brought someone here who could not get a job anywhere else, who is now going to earn over $500,000 of our taxpayer money with zero accountability if we don't hold them accountable. If we don't take charge of our own life. Remember, we're 13 for 13 now, right? 13 city managers. We can't trust their decisions because they don't care what is right or what is wrong. They care about what is good for them. So you have to do better. We have to do more. You have to figure out what is right for us. Can we carry on? Can we carry on and survive with this block majority? That's the question that those of you that are in the first, the fourth, the second, and the third wards are going to have to decide for yourself. Can you carry on for 2 more years like this? Let me see some of these questions. What interest do they have for bringing him on? Where do their interests lie? I think that's a great question because that's exactly what I asked in my public comment. We knew that Charles Montoya was shady. We knew that Charles Montoya had been fired for taking money that wasn't his. We knew that Charles Montoya had fired a financial officer in a city in Colorado for bringing attention to his fiscal mismanagement and was calling for an audit, and he fired her just like he did Barbara Whitehorn. We know that he has brought Stifle into bond at every single city he's worked for. So Isaac, truly the question is you knew he was a crook. What were you using him for? What did you like, if your project became City Hall, well then you knew you couldn't do it without stealing $333 million of profits out of the general fund. You knew you couldn't do that. You knew that you had to deceive the public. Or how about you knew that he would get rid of the downtown project so that you could subdivide it and sell it out to the highest bidders? Or what about the fact that he's the new talk on the navigation center is that it's never going to come forward because of the fiscal mismanagement and and lack of preparation. Yeah, you need shady people needs shady people. This isn't new information. It's just now it all came to a head publicly 7 months in. So it's time to rise up. Last night was a sight to be seen, but it is something we have seen over and 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 over again. It has to stop. And it's not the employees. It's the elected officials. Fred Charette has hired every city manager that we have fired. Juan, Sandra, Fred, Teddy, brought Rob Field here, brought Terry Ladeau in, brought this guy. What are we doing? Mayor Tran, this was her first pick. This was her first go and stood behind the absolute worst candidate after the absolute worst second candidate withdrew. So there you go, have it, San Bernardino. open for discussion. Put your thoughts in the chat, and we have to do better. My call is that we keep an interim for 6 months and let the new council members that are coming in, myself and the other two that will be here in December, be able to be a part of that recruitment for the new permanent city manager. I, as always, will call that the finalists be made public and be given a forum in front of the community so that the community can ask questions and see who wants to come here and see their qualifications without trying to hide everything behind closed doors. So that's where I stand on that. So, yeah, Monique, ask them. Yeah, ask your council. You can ask them to resign. You guys can take your power. Take your position. Do what you think you need to do, because we can't survive like this. We can't shell out $500,000 every 7 months for unqualified, corrupt people to run our city. And it's time for accountability. So, yeah, recall is an option as well. Everything is available to you. But we must do something. We must move on. We must. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day. I will look at your comments, and please share this, get this out, because people need to understand that last night was not just a freebie. It really is going to cost us money, and we need accountability for that. So thank you guys, as always. Have a great day.